My name is Michael Young, and I'm a lawyer who handles will contests and other contested estate and trust cases in Texas. In other videos, I've discussed how most, not all, but most will contests and other trust and estate disputes in Texas end up settling before trial. And often they will settle at mediation, or at least mediation may set the ground for a later settlement. And it used to be pre-COVID that almost all mediations were conducted in person. The lawyers and the parties would drive to a conference center or a lawyer's office, and they'd be in their separate physical rooms, and the mediator would shuffle back and forth. And it was usually an all-day affair. Well, since COVID, I would say the majority of mediations now occur online via typically Zoom or some other online platform. I'd probably say about 70% of the mediations I participate in these days are Zoom, 30% still in person. Well, what are the upsides and downsides of doing a mediation virtually online? Well, the obvious upside is that parties who are far apart, which often happens in these cases, they don't all have to drive down to the same mediator's office. They can appear virtually, so that saves on time and expense. Oftentimes, the online is more efficient. The participants are put in their own Zoom rooms, and the mediator can just move back and forth electronically to try to resolve a case. Now, a lot of lawyers, myself included, when Zoom mediations started to become popular, wondered whether or not fewer cases would settle. And that was with the belief that if the parties had to go to a conference room and they had to eat bland food, and they were stuck in a conference room all day, and 5:30 or 6 o'clock came around, and everybody's a little worn out, and the mediator was putting pressure on them, that would lead to both sides compromising a little bit more than they otherwise would, and that would lead to a settlement. And the thought was potentially online that wouldn't necessarily be the case, and you would have fewer settlements. And in my experience, after now doing these online mediations for a good 5 years or so, is I really have not noticed much of a difference in whether a case settles or not, if it's virtual or if it's in person. My experience is that if both sides are open to settlement and they're motivated to settle for various reasons, to put the dispute behind them, often to limit attorney's fees, or just to have certainty of the result regarding what they're going to get from the estate or trust, as opposed to gambling on a jury and waiting another year or 2 or 3 or more as litigation progresses and potentially appeals, that if both sides are motivated, the case can settle just as easily online as it can in person. And on the other hand, if one side isn't motivated, it really doesn't matter. So I encourage my clients to consider an online mediation. And since I have generally a statewide practice for estate and life insurance cases, we can be creative. And, I may have a case on one day that I'm using a mediator in Dallas, the next day a mediator in San Antonio, and then a week or 2 later we're using a mediator in Houston. And that gives us a little more flexibility to pick the mediator that both attorneys believe would be the best mediator for the case. If you have in a contested estate or trust or a life insurance policy issue, please give me a call.